Thanks for joining us and taking the time this evening. Just going to give it one more minute here and then we'll start. Thank you for joining us tonight and welcome to the virtual information session for the Augusta's Villas. We are recording tonight's session to share it with the community. I think most folks are here and I hope you can all hear us correctly. My name is Leah Thompson and I'm an engagement specialist with BNA. I will be moderating tonight's discussion. Thank you again for taking the time to join us this evening. We will begin. So I'd like to introduce you to the project team. Tonight, I'm joined by my colleagues, Kathy Oberg, President of BNA, and Jeff Hansen, Senior Planner and Project Manager. Also joining us this evening are John Page and Kyle Werzer, who are private developers working to bring the Augustas to life. John Page is a custom home builder with over 15 years experience in Calgary and the surrounding area. His portfolio ranges from high-end renovations to luxury custom homes in prestigious neighborhoods such as Springbank, Hill, Hillhurst, and Briar Hill. Kyle brings 12 years of experience in home building and land development. He currently oversees operations where he manages multiple home builders and over 15 active residential communities. Brad Kirk, who's not here with us tonight, is an established developer with ownership investments in several home building and land development ventures across Southern Alberta and the United States. Together, John, Kyle, and Brad have partnered to expand into the Calgary market through strategic land acquisitions, and they're preparing to launch a new home building and development company in the coming months. BNA is supporting John and Kyle through the project's planning application and community engagement. I'll turn it over to Kyle, who will share a bit more about their development experience and land ownership at Belvedere Drive.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Kyle Werzer, I oversee communities, land development, construction, sort of all of the above. Here with my business partner, John Page, who heads up construction mostly. Some of the more technical questions. We acquired Elvedine last year. It was at the time that we bought the project, it was in court proceedings. And so we approached the previous ownership group and did a deal with them where we bought out the shares. And so you will notice that the company, it's still the same numbered company. Which we do plan on changing at some point, but yeah, so we took it over and we noticed, not much has really been done with it the last few years, but we hope we can change that and add something nice for the community. So thank you, Leah.
Thank you. So before we jump into the application details and the project vision, I'd like to share how you can engage with the project team in tonight's session. So feel free to share your comments or questions during the presentation. We have also reserved time at the end for a Q&A. You can ask questions by using the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen. If you just mouse over, it should pop up. You can also feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute you if you'd like to share your comment or question verbally. There's also closed caption at the bottom of the screen if that's helpful for you as well. So the goal for this evening is to share more information about the project with the Springbank community. I'd like to just thank you to those few community members who have already sent in their emailed questions. I believe the presentation will provide responses to most of those questions. As well, in advance of tonight, we heard from a couple residents and the ward office that there was a desire for an in-person meeting instead of a virtual session. We do appreciate that sentiment and request. However, given the history of the site and the interest, we felt it was important to provide everyone with consistent information as a base, and also to have a recording that could be shared with everyone who wasn't able to attend tonight. If we do need a follow-up meeting, we're happy to consider an in-person event, as we acknowledge that is a valuable option. A virtual information session is also a good way to share information early in the planning application stage. It allows the project team to share details cohesively with the community and answer questions that your neighbor might also be wondering. Our team would like to acknowledge that many communities are being faced with development applications as Calgary manages its housing crisis. And we do appreciate your attendance tonight and hope to keep the meeting concise and effective so that you don't lose your whole evening. Your feedback is valuable, and all comments and questions received tonight will be shared with the city in consideration with the application process. I'll now pass it over to Kathy, who will walk us through the application.
Great, thank you, Leah, and thank you very much for attending this evening. The subject site is located at 30 Elvedine Drive with a site area that's just over 1 hectare, which is just under 3 acres. While the project began including this parcel and the parcel to the east, our clients are only working on the west parcel. However, they are working closely with the city to assist in resolving issues that the east parcel has been facing. I believe there's been some grading and some drainage issues, as well as the retaining walls. We appreciate that our site received approvals, stripping and grading commenced, and then the project didn't get built. We are eager, as likely you are, to see the parcel advanced beyond what you experience today, likely increased dust and debris into your properties and homes. I would like to begin by clarifying that the land use redesignation sign that is currently posted on the site is incorrect. If you've gone by the site, you will have read that the proposed land use change will allow a maximum of 128 units, but it should have read a maximum of 92. But we want to be very clear with you tonight that the Augusta Villas project is proposing to develop 56 luxury townhomes within a condominium site, and not seeking to build the maximum units as calculated by the land use district and the parcel size. This error has been corrected on the city's development map website, also with the maximal showing that maximal allowable unit count of 92. The current RG zoning allows for the development of single-family, semi-detached, or townhome units with the construction of a public roadway within the parcel. This configuration would create a backyard interface with Elvedine Drive. Some of you might recall the previous approval included a public roadway and lots on either side of the road with backyards adjacent to Elvedine. In redesigning the site, we recognize that there are neighboring homes on Elvedine Drive who front and back onto the road. We wanted to minimize disruptive traffic and maintain the quiet streetscape by designing the townhome garages on the interior of the site and the removal of a public roadway. To achieve this outcome, we need to look at the site as a comprehensive condo site and must look at a different land use district, and the closest one to meet those design needs is the MG zoning, which allows for comprehensive ground-oriented development. Our roads within the project would be private, and we would have coordinated landscape, maintenance, and upkeep of the entire parcel as a whole, as it would be contained within a condo association. The Augusta Villas are envisioned to be a complete cohesive development with well-maintained landscaping and a Woonorf at the north end. You might say, what is a Woonorf? It's an inspired European design. It's a street that encourages pedestrian connectivity and community, and that would connect into the other pathways that exist to the east. Each of the 56 units are proposed to be approximately 2,500 square feet with their own private 2-car garage. The front of the homes facing Elvedine Drive would have thoughtful curb appeal and pedestrian access. A strata ownership model will be on title to ensure quality landscaping and upkeep in summer and winter months. Basement or secondary suites are not permitted in the proposed land use zoning. The site slopes from west to east as demonstrated in the cross-section, which we will be working with the land and grade with all vehicular access occurring internal to the site. A landscape area will border all of our sides, and we will meet the bylaw for landscaping requirements, including trees. It is our goal to be a high-quality development that is complementary to the neighboring high-quality homes. John and Kyle have spent time looking for precedent examples that will guide their development permit. They have reviewed townhome examples from across the country, and we felt it would be beneficial for you to see the quality design that they are hoping to build. I have 3 pages of examples to share. This slide here is an example of ground-oriented units with front doors and landscaping. Some have stairs, some are directly off the street. This one shows the example of the street appeal and the use of form to create a very attractive streetscape. And this one here, the use of outdoor rooms to add to the appeal of multi-unit buildings. These precedents will be used to facilitate a development permit application, which only occurs after the land use redesignation is considered and approved by council. As part of the land use redesignation application, we are also required to submit for an area structure plan amendment, as the lands are currently noted in the standard suburban land district in the Springbank Hill area structure plan. We recognize that this ASP was approved a few years ago, and at the time our clients did not own the property. We are proposing a revision to the medium density category to accommodate this building form. However, the density range in the ASP far exceeds what we are proposing. The policy illustrates a density between 38 and 148 units per hectare, and we are proposing 48 units per hectare. We are willing to have the land use redesignation contain a maximum density modifier to ensure our proposal is tied to the application before you, which is 56 units. In the next 4 slides, we would like to show you some of the conceptual illustrations that we've prepared for the site. We'll show you a number of views to give you an idea of what to expect, and also highlighting some special elements. This one here shows you the ground-oriented units with front stoops, stairs, landscaping, and some retained plantings. This one gives you an example of the rooftop amenities, as well as what you can expect from the interior corridors for garages and parking, as well as sidewalks that will frame the buildings. This one is another angle giving a little bit of a farther example of the garages. And you can see as we slope the buildings that are on the west side of the property will sit a little bit higher than those that will transition to the east. And this one here shows that we've got the opportunity for some front amenity spaces connecting to the sidewalks and the front doors, with some of those recessed areas that also were shown in the other renderings. So we will continue to engage. I promised it would be a quick presentation. We will continue to engage with the community throughout the process. This is the first one here. We will be sharing it on our website and available, as well as any updates that we have. We are working to, we will adjust our application as we get comments from the city through their circulation process, as well as we would like to consider the comments that we receive from yourselves tonight. Once we resubmit the application, there will be an opportunity for additional public comment. Leah will be keeping all of the email correspondence with her, and she'll be sharing as we go to all of you. And certainly if you have any neighbors that are missing, we would happily take their information as well. And then if we get to our dates for Calgary Public hearing, then we will let you know when you can go and speak before City Council, should you be interested in speaking on the application. So I'm going to pass it back to Leah, and you're going to give a little bit more information.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Before we get into kind of how you can continue to engage with us, we do have quite a few questions that have already come through the chat, and I recognize, we've got someone with their hand up as well who wishes to speak. So we do want this to be conversational. I know it was a pretty short and concise presentation, but we really are here to share information, answer your questions, and provide as much clarity as we can on this. So I'm just going to start with kind of the top of the queue here, and I'll read out your question, and then we'll share it over to our project team. So the first one here says, thanks for engaging with the community. There's quite a lot of opposition with this piece of land and the number of units / traffic land use change proposed. We go to Griffith Woods School, and on the regular, kids are almost hit daily. What will this project team do to ensure there is proper crosswalk at the end of Elvedine and 26th Avenue? Kathy?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Oh, you're a bit hard to hear right now.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, there
Is
you
that
go.
any better?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Certainly, our project will be adding a sidewalk along our western edge, so that will will close the gap that exists along the drive. As we have this application circulated, we will hear from the transportation group. And certainly this is something that we'll bring back as part of our what we heard and to address that with the transportation team. It's usually within those conversations, if there's some upgrades that are needed that are going to improve a situation that they know of an area, we talk about it and see if there's improvements that we could make or that the city could make. So I anticipate that we'll probably have more dialogue related to that, and certainly we'll raise this as a point where you're seeing some conflict, and we'll talk about that with the city.
Thank you. Lori, I know you've got a couple of questions in the chat and your hand raised as well. So I'm gonna unmute you if you'd like to go ahead and speak your question.
I have a few. Is that all right?
That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. We'll just do one at a time though.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why did it take B&A so long to contact and notify residents of this land use change, and why was it done after the development submission deadline?
That's a very good question. Appreciate that. We submitted the application, and it's certainly, applications take a number of months. They're not a 1 to 2 month process. Appreciate that we decided to schedule it so there was time. We know the sign was up, and there was some questions around understanding the application. We probably could have done it sooner, and we apologize for that. But we certainly are not restricting comments to come in now. There is a comment period, but certainly that is not, it's not a restricted period. And we're happy to continue to get comments tonight, as well as comments into the file planner, and then address those even though we're past the deadline.
All right. And yeah, because we are a ward without a councillor.
You are, yeah.
We are not represented.
Mhm.
We had to get our comments in, our submissions in 15 days prior. Well, we had to get it in by April 15th, I guess it was. So yeah, it just seems a little unfair how we're expected to comment on a project we know nothing about. The virtual meeting comes after the fact that we have to do our submissions. So I think that's a little unbalanced. I'm just making that point.
Okay.
The other thing that I need to know is why do we need to amend the area structure plan? Why could we still not have high density built in this proposed parcel under the current RG zoning? Why do we have to
Amend it?
Yeah.
No, it's a very valid question. The land use district is it's set up in a few different ways. The RG land use, it prescribes you have public roads, and so as soon as you go away and you want to create a condo site, a comprehensive site, with all the benefits that come with that, with just the maintenance and kind of the upkeep and whatnot, and a choice that Kyle and John wanted to pursue. We're unable to do it under the RG zoning. Every parcel needs to be fronting onto a public road, and there's also just the requirements of the RG. It's meant to be a land use that we use for blocks. So your typical blocks that front onto a street. So we use that land use, and so because it doesn't have the ability to do a comprehensive development on it, we go into that MG zone. And I did see that other comment where you asked, how do you guarantee that you'll only have that maximum number? We have the opportunity with the MG to set maximum modifiers. So it ends up looking like MG, and then I'll just pick a number. I don't know if that's the exact, like 48 D, which gives a maximum density modifier. And when that's approved by council, that is the maximum number that can be built. And so there is a little bit of belts and braces that can be added to that land use district. But essentially it was the district that we needed to be able to fulfill the vision that we had. We couldn't do it under RG.
So this will absolutely guarantee that no more than 56 townhomes will be built?
Under the land use, yes. It can be guaranteed under the land use, correct. Yeah.
I looked at the structure, the pictures of these townhomes, they are quite high. What is the height of these?
Sure.
What,
I might ask, Kyle or John to answer that question. What the maximum height is of those. Is it consistent with the single family home heights?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, you can. Thanks, John.
We don't have exact numbers yet, but
Okay.
they're going to be flat roofs, so the overall height will be similar to single family homes.
Okay. And a single family home is 11 meters in the RG zoning.
That's
Is that correct, Jeff? Yeah, 11 meters.
so, but you're gonna put these on top of a grade too, obviously, so what kind of grades are we looking at that these 11?
Well, this is a good image that I have up here that shows you how it terraces. It terraces to the east. And so what we do is every building would have a grade that we'd have to the height gets measured from. So as you can see, like as we get closer, we're consistently kind of keeping that, but then working with the grade. So it would remain consistent, and then it's almost like a slope adaptive development where the building form is working with the grade.
So does that mean you'll be building retaining walls to the east?
Typically what we do when we build with the grade, the retaining ends up within the building, and John, you can confirm that for me, but the retaining ends up in the building. So if you look when you've got basement levels, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, when you've got basement levels, you end up retaining within the building as opposed to having to create walls. Is that correct, John?
That's our plan. We're going to use the buildings as much as possible. The existing project has a retaining wall that runs completely north south along the east portion of the property. And
Do you mean, is that the retaining wall that had a permit approved
that's the
retaining
one,
wall?
yeah.
Okay,
So we're going to try to make that wall lower by using the buildings to retain some of the dirt. And then, but we don't know, like on the north side, we're not quite sure how that's going to work yet with grades, because we need to obviously get further in the process to get some more definite answers for you.
but in terms of other infrastructure, you must be planning upon swales and
That's
some
correct.
sort of retaining wall to prevent any overland water coming from your property to the north, right?
That's correct. This one's a bit interesting because the Elmont project that's below to the east, the city's now taken that over, so they're going to be finishing that portion of the project, the swales and the retaining wall. So ours is going to tie into theirs, so it'll all be designed together.
Okay, so do you have infrastructure in mind besides what we just talked about? Like, will there be emergency water exits? Will you have to, because of the high density, will you have to do more work with the sewer lines, with the current water infrastructure? Will capacities have to be increased?
Again, it's quite early, but presently the engineer said that the existing services are up to the level needed for this size of development.
So we know the traffic volumes through the neighborhood is quite high now, and causes obviously some safety issues. So what do you envision the traffic volumes increasing by with this high density?
That's a great question. We have not, and we suspect we might get asked some questions like that with the transportation department. Typically there's, and we don't have a transportation consultant here with us tonight, but the volumes, there's of course different volumes that exist on different roads. I believe that might be something that we have to answer in our follow-up, Leah, but how many trips are assumed out of each of the units? It's something that we can look at a little bit closer. We don't have the information here tonight, but typically it's a conversation that we have with the city as they're confirming this application with their circulation.
Okay, yeah, because we are I live in the community directly north, which is Elmont.
Yeah.
Elmont condominiums, ironically built by Augusta Fine Homes. So Augusta Villas sort of surprised us. But at any rate, we have a west retaining wall that is somewhat supported by Alveden Drive. So, since traffic will definitely be increased along that road, I'm hoping that people take that into the traffic study account and make sure that nothing is compromised or jeopardized in our community.
Lori, one quick thing that I just want to point out. We originally had a feasibility study done with the RG zoning, and like Kathy said, because those units have to face a public road, it left us limited with where we could put the garages and where people are going to enter and exit their garages. So the really inefficient part of that study was that the garages would all be facing Elvedine Drive, which I don't think any of the neighbors would really like, because it's going to be, 20 some garages facing Elvedine Drive. And then with us going to this new zoning, it allows us the ability to flip them the other way. If you can see on the site map there, it's all the gray boxes there. That would be the garages that we have, how we have it designed now. And then, so obviously from a traffic perspective, it's much more efficient and safer. And then second to that, it'll look a lot nicer if we have the front elevation facing Elvedine and no garage there. So hope that helps answer your question a bit too.
Thanks, Kyle. Sorry, Lori, I'm just gonna jump in. I don't mean to cut you off. I just recognize there are quite a few other folks in the queue with questions. So definitely. Pardon me?
No, I'm being facetious. I thought that I was the only one asking a question.
But definitely happy to come back to you if we haven't answered any more that are top of mind as we go through the queue, and really appreciate your thoughtful comments and questions here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lori. So just going to read the next one off here. Was it the current ownership that listed 16 or so individual lots recently on the parcel? If so, why the change to increase density now?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And yes, there was a previous, it was a non-statutory document, a non-statutory approval. So the land use on the parcel was R2, and there was a proposition to have 16 homes, some single family, some semi-detached, which could result in, if all of them had suites, they would be, also in that 30 range, 34 range. The desire was to look at the land, look at the site a little bit more. I know that didn't get developed when Kyle and John looked at this with their other partner. They thought there was a better opportunity for just really fronting onto the street and creating a different product type. The zoning is now, it went to the RG. And then when we looked at it closer, we thought to realize some luxury townhomes instead of singles with suites, because we know some of those do have their complexities with parking. We thought putting forward a proposition that was a combination of townhomes and 2-car garages for each was a nice interface for the neighborhood, and decided to look to increase the density. So the previous application with the 16 homes had that backyard fronting, had the backyards adjacent, and they thought they could create a much better street presence for the community. So we're seeking that density change.
Thanks, Kathy. So given the nature, why not DC to provide specific guarantees to the community versus MG that could be changed at a future time? Or why not concurrent DP, again, to provide assurances?
We're never opposed to a direct control district. Typically, the city prefers not to have direct control districts if it can be accommodated through a land use. But I absolutely hear what you're saying. If land uses change over time, then it changes with the new land use district. With a direct control, it's essentially an approval that's an approval in time. The only way to change that, you'd have to go through another application so it doesn't change when policy changes. So we're not opposed to that. Typically, that would be something if administration felt that it met all the standard district, that would be something that would need to potentially be identified to your local counselor as a desired outcome, but we certainly aren't opposed to that. From a development permit standpoint, there's a lot of work that goes into development permits, as you heard. John talked about just some of the understanding some elements at this point, and certainly we'll have to work through that. I think given the nature of this having a land use application as well as an area structure plan, I think we just want to go through this process to see and certainly hear from all of you on this process before we advance going into that more detailed technical level that the next stage would bring. So yeah, we're certainly interested to hear from everyone tonight, and then we'll kind of gauge that, but certainly open to it, DC.
Thanks, Kathy. Someone has mentioned they missed our reasoning on why we expect this Zoom session to replace a regular open house, which has been the norm for dozens of years.
Yeah.
So
I certainly can answer that. So we tend to do combinations, and we identified early on that what we like about virtual sessions is we're able to present all the information and have all of you hear the questions that you're getting from your neighbors and respond to it kind of holistically. And then we can record it, and then we have kind of the base information captured, and we can share it that way. We are absolutely open to having in-person sessions. We find that we do in-person. We don't tend to do a formal presentation. We have boards and we answer as many questions as we can. And sometimes you don't get to hear all the answers and not know that, hey, I did have that question and this is the answer. So we are happy to have an additional session once we see what the comments are tonight. I'm happy to come out and meet with you. We did debate it, and we thought this might be the best way, and then able to post it, but certainly open to that as a follow-up.
yes, thanks, Kathy. I'm just gonna read out a couple more in the queue, and then we'll go over to someone who's got their hand raised. So the comment or question here is, given timelines, assume that this will be going forward after the election.
We have not determined that yet. We're at the process where we're going to get the comments from the city and work through the comments and get the comments here. And certainly we'll be responding to the comments that we hear. So we don't have a projected timeline at this moment, but want to be able to just work through the process and certainly answer the questions that we get. So we haven't determined if it's when it will be going forward. That's something that we have to talk about with our file planner as well. And if when they get to a position that they're either comfortable approving it or if they have a different opinion on the file. So we don't have any dates at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe I'll just add on to that. I know we haven't got quite to the last slide yet, but we are launching a project webpage tomorrow in the coming days, which will house the presentation, the recording, and more information as we progress through the application. I've also got your emails, those that have registered this evening. So I'll send a follow-up email just to ensure you want to continue to receive updates on the project and how you can continue to engage with us. That's also a great way for you to continue to receive notifications and updates as we move forward. So I'll just read a couple more here, and then we'll go over to Ashley, who's got their hand raised. So the Elvedine community is predominantly single-family homes on large estate properties. John mentioned that one of the goals is to add something nice to the community. There's a strong opposition from the community regarding your proposed development, as evidenced by the high volume of signatures on the petition. Why would you propose such a high-density project that will devalue our property values, create a massive influx of traffic, and create a hazard for children and pedestrians in our community? Sorry, Kathy, you just gotta lean forward again. Nope, you're still a little bit muffled.
I'm not sure. How's this now?
Perfect.
Okay, better?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's because you kick in and I appreciate the comment. It's interesting and I'm just going to go to the area structure plan as something to speak to here. When we design new communities, within every quarter section of land, and a quarter section would be, here's a square right here, quarter section of land. We typically place neighborhood activity centers, nodes, and the whole purpose is to be able to balance density through through our areas, and it's sensitive density. It's you know, we're talking about townhomes here. Sometimes it can be apartments. But it's very common that when we look at it at the structure of our communities, we have these areas. You can tell that when you look at this, there's limited kind of orange. I would say, you know, there's the orange that we're showing, but it's not uncommon for us to see mixed densities. What's very interesting and is the west side. The west side is probably the lowest density that we have within the city. And certainly that came from, you know, the lands were annexed in the late 90s, and there were lots of, you know, 5 and 10 and 15 acre parcels. And when it was brought in, there was there was some policy plans that were put together, and there was a range of different densities. We certainly have seen densities change over the course of my 27 years. I've seen it from you know, those low densities to ones that we're trying to have complete communities. We're trying to keep transit within our communities. Transit takes ridership. Certainly we've got, and I know there's probably concerns, and we saw that in some of the pre-comments of just potentially, you know, school capacities. But it's not uncommon for us to see these densities in new communities. And so when we looked at this project, sure, we looked at the area. Absolutely, there's a mix of different housing types. And I think that's where we got to the quality proposition that we have here is there. Yeah, we could put in potentially smaller single family homes, trying to help the housing crisis that we do have in the city. The city does now have minimum densities that are quite a bit higher than what we've seen in previous years. 8 units per acre is the standard, and what we have seen certainly in the west side is anywhere from, you know, 3 to 7 units per acre. So we looked at it going, we know that this is an area that has developed at a, you know, a lower density, but is this, you know, could we get a quality development that is appropriate, that will add some density and hit all those other elements? So we felt it was a good proposition, given that it was still within the same kind of height range as the single family homes, but certainly recognizing that it is a different form.
If I might add, Kathy, something else to this piece is the certainty that you get with the MG. Again, we can add that density modifier to ensure there's the limit on the number of units. Whereas if it was RG, each of those units could potentially have a secondary suite. So there's a lot more uncertainty in that respect as to the true number of units that might go in there. As a result, there's less certainty in terms of the number of cars that are coming and going with that number of units, parking, that kind of thing. So there are those elements that are added in this as well. There's the walkway on the north end of the site that will be completed and connect to that east block. So in terms of, you know, pedestrian safety, that sort of thing, there will be that additional pedestrian connectivity that you would get with the completion of the site.
Thank you. Ashley, I'm going to turn it over to you. I see you've got your hand raised, so you should be able to unmute now.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. Yeah, I'm glad that, like, you know, the RG was brought up because what I struggle with is that given a year ago, this site was R2, the surrounding was R1S. And Kathy, I know you've kind of said, oh, well, you know, the density's low, and so we're going to go for a little bit higher density in here. But why haven't you looked at developing the site with homes and lot sizes and densities that provide appropriate transitional planning that fits with the surrounding context? Because just because the widely unsupported blanket rezoning went forward doesn't mean that we should fail to follow proper planning that considers the context because it wasn't RG. Nobody supported the RG. That went through. And so let's talk about the context, not going from, you know, RG to MG and just a small density increase. Why aren't you considering something that actually fits within the context and considers proper planning?
Well, we certainly, and I don't know if Kyle or John, you want to add to this. I know it's an analysis that you guys took, and I appreciate the perspective that the lots are larger. For us, we looked at the scale of the height and the appropriateness and the benefits it could give to the street. But it's a valid comment.
Pardon?
It's a valid, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. It's a valid perspective to have that you'd prefer to see single families. I think there's, as noted by Jeff, there's lots of opportunities. We do recognize the blanket zoning did come into play with R2. There is, you know, the kind of that semi-detached form that can be achieved there with the suites. We just thought comprehensively it would be a much more attractive development, achieving very similar numbers between them. And yeah, I don't know, Kyle or John, did you want to add anything? I mean, you had looked at the site and thought there was great opportunity to be consistent with kind of scale.
Yeah, I mean, when we purchased the site, the blanket zoning had already went through. So for us, we looked at it as an RG piece. But I do understand that before that, the previous ownership had different plans with it. But yeah, when we came in, we were looking at it as an RG piece.
Thank you. I'm gonna read the next one here. So with the continued change in density concentration, what has been marked versus the current vision, lack of transparency and consideration of devaluing our homes, comments to traffic with suboptimal plans to address, and so many other concerns. The developers have lost credibility with the community. So what is your plan to address this concern?
The developers are different, and I think that's what we tried to explain at the beginning, is the developer that had the approvals for this site is no longer here, no longer connected to the application, does not own the land. These are new developers. They have built in a number of communities within the city with quality developments. And so is that, I guess my question is, hopefully that gives some peace of mind to those of you that potentially experienced the previous developer, but they're committed to completing the development, knowing that it's sitting kind of in a half state at the moment. But certainly it's a completely different developer group than what was there before.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm just going to read through a few more before we go back over to you, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
So just back to the height, would we put a height modifier as well in the MG?
Does the MG have a height modifier, Jeff? I'm trying to recall. If not, we would be willing to look at the height modifications as well. MG is typically it's street grade oriented, so we do have to have accesses to each unit from grade. So it does restrict, you know, if you like to do a development that's higher, say, not an apartment. We could look at that definitely if it was in a direct control district, that could be also achieved within a direct control, but it's not something we'd be open to considering modifications in height and density.
Yeah, just to add to that, Kathy, the maximum height in the MG district is 13 meters. So it's just about a meter and a half higher than what is being considered in the development. So to your point, though, yeah, we can definitely look at it closer if the modifier applies to the height as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I've made a note here, and again, all of the questions, comments are being recorded. So things that we don't particularly have the straight answer to at this moment, we will be, you know, providing those answers to all of you who have attended this evening and posting them to the site as well. And just to follow up to that comment on the height modifier with MG, the person writes, or again, DC, as was done with other developments in the area. So Jeff, you had mentioned, or Kathy, sorry, potentially it could be within the DC, but we can definitely look into that. Oh, we can't hear you, Kathy, again. We're having a hard time hearing you, Kathy.
Oh,
Oh, there you are.
okay. After I make a noise.
Yeah.
We do DCs. Typically it's when there is a modification that administration feels they can't do through relaxation. We certainly can raise this with our file planner. And there are examples probably throughout the west side as well as the city. So it's not, yeah, it's something that we could certainly use as a tool.
Thanks. Okay, Lori, I'm going to go over to you. There are quite a few other questions in the queue, so we'll just restrict it to one question at this time, if we could, please. Should be able to unmute.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. The height bothers me because our neighborhood is directly north of this development site. I don't know, have any of you been out to this site?
So you're here, you're directly north here, Lori, right?
Yeah, we went
Sorry.
through it as well, Lori.
Sorry, we are directly, let me get that straight again. We are
Right here,
directly,
right?
we are, yes, correct. So we're quite a bit below grade already, our villas. So when you take a look at the grades that exist up there right now, and then you tack on another 13 meters plus, that's going to be really quite high next to a neighborhood like this.
Can I answer this?
You sure can, yeah.
So in the RG zoning, the present zoning, the houses that will be built are quite close to you along that north edge of the property. And our intention is with this development, can you go back to the top view, Kathy? You'll see at the top, there's that Woonurf. It's that road that separates. There's gonna be a pedestrian access. So the difference between this and the RG is that gives a separation there between your units and the first units that get built. So this will move those units further away. It's meant
Yeah,
to.
I wish there was
an
some
idea
kind of
where this-
legend on that diagram so I could make out what your colors are and everything.
Yeah, we can
else.
get you a more detailed one. But yeah, so the difference would be like the RG, in the RG zoning, the units will be closer. In this particular setup, we were able to move them off a bit. So it gives you a
So
bit more
what-
separation between those units.
What is the setback then from, let's say, our fence?
I don't know. I'd have to,
7, 8, 9. Potentially 10 meters, I'm guessing, because you've got the roadway
that
plus
sounds right.
the green, probably about 10 meters.
Is it a roadway or a walkway?
It's kind of it's a combination of both. So there's a pathway component here. A Woonurf is like it prioritizes the pedestrian, but it allows vehicles on it. And most times we'll use a different texture. So it feels like it's a pathway as opposed to an access. But those
It's
units
not
that
gonna be a
are
regular access either. It's meant
Yeah.
for emergency vehicles.
emergency only.
Yeah.
So anyone coming in would come in and they would park within their garages. And then they would come back and come exit out the same spot in this south corner. And then
Okay.
this would be used for emergency access. You probably have bollards that will have there, but it'd be then a pedestrian walkway. And then in case of emergency, then you'd be able to open that up for emergency vehicles. Yeah, or emergency access out.
Okay, so with the sorry, this is kind of all entwined with one question. But with the MG, are there shadow studies that are done?
We can certainly do a shadow study, Lori. We haven't prepared one, but we could do that as part of our response. Is we could do a shadow study and demonstrate what the shadow would be off these proposed buildings. Because
Okay.
we're also going down in grades, so it will be interesting to see, especially because this is higher. The yellow ones are going to be higher than the greeny blue in the middle, and then the blue at the bottom is going to as it terraces down. But we could certainly do that.
Yeah, okay, and this walkway, I see that now, as you pointed it out, is it going to be gated? Is it going to be locked? Is it going to be open 24/7? What's the
It will
plan?
have a public access easement over it, so it will be open.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So just further to the earlier comment about the community not being represented by a ward councillor at this time, as well as, you know, the upcoming election, they've just shared that for their best interest, it might be, you know, help with our goodwill as well, if we could share a timeline that's projected. So, sorry, Kathy, can't. Maybe try muting and then unmuting again. Might reset you. There we go. We can hear you again.
Can you hear me again? Okay. We will know a little bit further down what our timelines are. We can't predict right at this moment, but recognizing we hear what you're saying about local council representation. We're still trying to work through comments, but we can certainly follow back up with timelines.
And just maybe further to that, Kathy, just to give a sense of kind of the process and where we're currently at in the process. We've submitted the application. You've seen the sign that's up on the site. And we've just recently received comments back from the city about the project. So now we have to go through a process to respond to those, as well as Leah mentioned. We'll take your comments here and through the engagement process into account. Then we will resubmit the application for the city to go through the proper process. Again, it gets circulated with all the relevant departments at the city. And then from there, either we will be able to move on to CPC, or there might be a few additional comments that we'll need to address. So I hope you can kind of appreciate that at this point in time, we could predict something, but even then we probably would not be the most accurate. So just to give you a sense of the process there.
Yeah, and sorry, just to expand on Jeff's planner speak, CPC is the Calgary Planning
Yes.
Commission.
Thank you, Leah.
Thanks. So next question here, from the map, will all units exit into Elvedine then? Will all units exit into Elvedine?
Yep.
That is the intention, given that this is an emergency access along the north side, is that they will come from this access point here in the south. So that's the intention.
Thank you. Further to kind of traffic questions or comments, the next one is, how are you accommodating for visitor parking? It appears that there are 6 spots on the south side. Visitor parking on Elvedine would be a significant traffic issue.
Yeah. John or Kyle, did you want to, I know you guys were looking at that when you were kind of doing some conceptual work. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's very early in the process again. Like, we want to provide as much visitor parking as possible. So we need to get a little further along before we can do that. The entire development process is quite lengthy with the design. But it is our intention to get as much visitor parking as possible. These are planned to be premium units, so we want to have the premium in all ways, which obviously includes parking as well.
Perfect. Maybe just to kind of piggyback onto that question, would you potentially consider building wider inner streets for visitor parking for those units?
I don't think that would be a possibility. If we do have to add visitor parking for any reason, we'd probably remove units internally and place the visitor parking there. I don't think the wider streets would make sense.
We actually wouldn't be allowed from fire. Fire code would not allow us to do that. But as you stated, we'd look at offering some additional parking within. It would be the loss of some units. But yeah, we aren't able to accommodate it within the lanes. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, the next question is, again, just kind of to the timelines, and question is, when could it possibly go in front of council? And sorry, Jeff and Kathy, I'm just gonna kind of expand that, you know, as soon as we do have those timelines, and once we do get that date set by city council, as you all know, the election is coming up in September, and that could potentially put a pause on public hearings and whatnot into the fall, and how that might look with the election. So As soon as we get those dates, we will be communicating them to the community. They'll be posted on the website. I will be sending out email notice to you all, so you have opportunity to submit your comments, attend in person, or dial in however you wish to engage. But again, kind of throughout the application process, we do welcome your feedback at any point. It doesn't need to be formal, and we will be circulating that with the city. Sorry, there's another question here. Not sure if there's a legend attached to the diagram, but can you confirm where the proposed walkway is? I believe we kind of went through that, and the exits for the neighbors.
There was a question about how many participants we have, and we have 35 attendees on this call, and then five of us are panelists. So, but 35 are logged into this meeting.
Yeah, thank you. And 3 of us are with BNA Studios, so helping with the planning, design, and community engagement, and John and Kyle are the developers. Just jumping down to another question.
When we post the video for this engagement session, we will also post all the boards that have been presented here tonight, and we will make sure to include additional information that has the legend on with what we post up.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Just going back to kind of road safety and pedestrian safety, this person apologized if they're a bit late joining the call, but the road is not to city standard for most of the road and has blind corners, lots of cut throughs for schools, many pedestrians, no sidewalks. It just feels wholly unmanageable within the current status of the road, never mind the school. I'm very concerned about the safety, and any of us who have lived here any length of time know we've had close calls before this type of additional density.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the first questions that we answered was questions about traffic and volumes and the road and safety. And we identified that we will take this back and have a more fulsome conversation with the transportation team at the city and talk about those elements. We don't have a transportation consultant on the call with us, but sometimes there's things that get identified with applications that are either safety concerns or pain points or things that require some upgrades, but we'll certainly have that conversation with the transportation team.
Thank you. One of the community members is just wondering how we will adjust our plans to address their concerns. There's a sense that there's opposition here from
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that's important. I think we balance, we listen to feedback. We'll take it into consideration. Certainly feedback from the city administration is also important. And so we look at that together. Not quite certain at this point what that will mean from our perspective with the application. But we will look at all the comments together and see and discuss it with our clients, with Kyle and John, and if there's updates, we'll certainly share the updates.
Sorry, I'm just going to go over to you, Marshall. I can unmute you, and you can feel free to share your comment or question.
Yeah, I figured as opposed to just typing, I'd just jump in and just
Okay.
ask a few different ones. So first of all, I mean, you're talking about densities and understand the new owners came in after the blanket rezoning and taking a DC to RG and all of that. But again, when you talk about densities in the area, and Kathy, I know we've worked together before kind of thing, you've got to remember what the ASP did and the incredible density that's being built fairly close to that. The other thing that we did do when the ASP was created, and somebody else mentioned this idea of transition, which this development doesn't have any transition at all and really plunks high density into single family homes, right? So as you're considering changes, looking at taking the density and the build forms on the, on the either side where we're interfacing with existing homes, dropping, at least giving it the appearance of single family homes, right? So dropping the number of units, dropping the heights, right? So people that are concerned about not even so much shadow studies, but from one of the pictures that you had, having somebody sit on the balcony that'll be on the very top, peering into their back doors, right? So that's sort of one general comment. The other thing that I want to point out, and thanks Jeff and Leah for talking about the process, but the process doesn't stop you from committing to the community that you say that you want to work with, that you won't move forward, right? As been mentioned by myself and other people, we have zero representation. The current counselor that's supporting the area has no time. She's told us that. So, I mean, you can say that it takes this time, this takes this, and I understand the process really well, but nothing's stopping you as a group saying we won't move forward with this until excuse me, till after the election, right? But I mean, given the time, you probably won't get there anyways, but hiding behind the process just goes, well, are you really wanting to work, right? Because I mean, with all the back and forth, there's, you know, the June CPC is already done, so we're into July. You're going to be rushing to try and get it done anyways, but it's concerning where you're saying, oh yeah, we don't have the dates, we don't have the times, as opposed to we agree we won't go forward with this till after the election. So that's slightly concerning as well. Thanks.
And that's a fair comment, Marshall. It's something we'll take back as a group and talk about. Recognizing that there are dates that are cutoffs, absolutely. There's certain dates that will get you to July council, will get you to September. It's just whether or not we'll have things resolved for those dates. So we're not trying to be dishonest with that. But when you're in that application process, sometimes it's out of our control. But we'll take that back.
But Kathy, it's not out of your control, because you could just say that you keep going with the process, but that you won't ask, because it's up to the applicants to say, I want to move forward to CPC. There's nothing stopping you from working through your process, going back and forth with the city, and then saying, thanks, we'll get to CPC after the election.
And that's something we'll take back to the group, that request. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just parsing through to make sure I'm not repeating questions, guys, so just bear with me. Thanks. This person shares they do not feel that we've come prepared to answer key basic questions with concrete answers, just deflecting with wishy-washy input. I would urge you to take away all the feedback you've received and come back with a revised plan. Again, appreciate that. And as mentioned, the comments and questions shared here this evening will be transcribed and consolidated into, you know, questions that we've heard, a lot of the similar questions or comments from the community. We will kind of consolidate them and share them on the website, so you can go back and see the responses and shared comments. If the traffic study that sounds like it has not been completed shows the existing roads and proximity to the elementary/middle school will have a material increase in traffic, would the developers be open to lower number of units than the proposed 56?
I think we would look at that, look at the outputs of that. At this point, we hadn't been asked for a traffic study, but we will certainly go back to the city and talk about traffic with them, and understand when they did their analysis and what the city has done some recent forecasts throughout the city, so we'll have that conversation. So and then see what it means. Certainly, if there's a concern, then and the result was to reduce units, we'd certainly consider that, but we'll take that away and have a conversation with the transportation team at the city.
Thanks. I do just want to know the time if anyone does have to jump. It's just about 7:05. We do have a few more questions in the queue, and Lori, I see your hand up again. So the next question here we've got in line is, what is the price range for these townhomes that are being sold for?
We might be early with that, but I'll certainly see if John or Kyle have a response to that.
Kyle, you want to go ahead? You're muted, Kyle.
Sorry. Yeah, based on another project nearby that's very similar, I would say that we'd probably be in the 1.2 to 1.5 range right now if everything stayed the same.
Thank you. Okay, we've just got a few more here. We'll go for about 10 more minutes. And again, feel free to share your comments. Kathy, do you mind just flipping to the last slide? So if anyone does have to jump, or the second to last, I should say, if anyone does have to jump, they can scan that QR code. I'm just going to also put in the chat the link directly to the feedback form, as well as my email. So you can feel free to provide your comments here.
Likely, can you hear me? There's a comment that there's likely more than 35 attendees, Leah. So what I might suggest is if any of you are sitting there with a neighbor or two, and there's definitely a higher number, please throw it into the Q&A just so that we're aware of it, and we'll make sure we document it. We're not, you know, we want to be able to properly articulate who attended the meeting. So certainly if you've got that, you can share it with us in the Q&A just so we have record of it.
Absolutely. And once the site goes live, which we're aiming for tomorrow, so we can put the presentation and the slides on the site, there's also an option to register for project updates. So feel free to reach out to me directly via email if you'd like to be included, or you can sign up on the site.
Okay, we're going to try to get through. I'm going to look through these and I'll try to directly answer them just so that we've got a few left and I don't want to leave them unanswered, and we'll do our best to finish up for 7:15. There is a question of, will these units have driveways or are the garages intended to be entered directly from the roadway? We will not be accessing directly from the road. We will have an access point into an interior drive aisles, and then garages will be accessed off that. So the street that you'll have will have front-facing units. The next question, supporting Marshall's comments with respect to approval after the election. So thank you for that comment. Municipal reserves, I believe it's a good question, Marshall. I don't know the answer. Jeff, do you know if was this documented as having been provided, or John? Was the MR already provided on this parcel when it was looked at as the whole? Do you know the answer?
I don't know that answer. I could find out though.
Yeah, we could too. And we could also inquire that.
I don't remember it being discussed.
Yeah, municipal reserve is required. I don't think it was noted in our comments, so we'll look into that, Marshall, just to ensure we're not here to not provide MR if it's required. Next question, can you tell us the frontage for each door that fronts onto Elveden Drive? Do we know the frontage, John? For each door?
Kyle, do you
Like
remember?
how wide are the units that you've conceptualized at this
20,
moment?
I think she drew them at 20 feet.
20 feet?
Yeah,
Okay.
it might have been 21, something like that.
Okay.
Right
Okay.
around there.
Another comment, the questions and concerns that have been raised this evening should not be a surprise to you. Many of these issues were raised in the petition. I might ask if we could get a copy of the petition, because I haven't seen the petition. So we would happily take a copy if one of you wanted to send it over to us. That would be terrific. And then, why have you held this forum tonight and been unprepared to answer questions and concerns? We apologize if you feel that we haven't answered. Some application processes sometimes are fluid and we can't. And when we don't, we haven't gone through the full development permit plan, so we can understand that there's probably some elements that we don't typically have all that detail at a land use stage, which I do also think creates some frustrations, but the conceptual renderings we pulled together just to be able to demonstrate and illustrate the intent. So apologize if you feel that way. And apologize if you feel that this is not building trust with you, because we wanted to come out and be very honest with the change of ownership and the intentions, and certainly do want to hear your feedback. And then the last two questions we have, please detail all plans as they relate to overland water flooding mitigation, including plans and commitments for engineered walks, swales, and slopes to protect surrounding areas. Did you want to add anything on that, John? I know we have a lot of technical standards that we do have to meet with the city, especially when we get to development permit stage. We cannot drain onto other properties. We have to retain, we have to go into the existing system. my expectation or understanding is you'll probably do that. It comes with a DSSP as well, does it not, with the site?
Yeah, the planning is going to be quite extensive for that. All we have right now is the existing 16 lots as they were drawn. So
Yeah.
it would share a similar layout to that with the retaining wall grades, all
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Okay, so more
And
work.
we could get
would
that
come.
document, those
Yeah.
documents to anyone who's interested, but they wouldn't apply. They'd be close to the new project, but they wouldn't apply directly.
Just what was done in the past to ensure all that. So we could certainly share that if there was an
It'd be very
interest.
similar to that, though, I would assume.
Yeah. And the last two comments, and then I'll pass it back over to Leah. More of a comment that this is not affordable housing as priced. Recognize that when we are in a housing supply situation where we have a lack of supply, the desire is to put housing project across the whole spectrum. It could be from affordable housing units to, apartments on the far end, large homes. It adds to the overall spectrum, which does add benefit. I recognize that it's, the price range is sitting in kind of the higher end of that range, but in all honesty, supply is certainly needed across all product types in the city. And then the last comment was apologizing that we feel this way is not an apology. You're deflecting responsibility and accountability. So I appreciate the comment. Okay, Leah, I'll pass it back over to you to the last bits of details.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. So as mentioned, there is a feedback form where we welcome your comments. So feel free to scan the QR code. I did drop the link into the chat for everyone, as well as the site should be live tomorrow. As mentioned, I will be sharing a follow-up email with you all with details that include both links that are up here on the screen, and we will continue to engage with you as the project progresses. Also, as Kathy mentioned, we'll be having an internal conversation about timelines and taking your comments and questions back for internal discussion and consideration, as well as I'll be consolidating all of the comments and questions here this evening to post them on the site and share with the city. So if you just want to flip to the last slide there, Kathy, there's my email if you'd like to contact me directly if you have any follow-up questions or comments after tonight's session, or if anything comes to mind, please feel free to reach out. By all means, we do want this to be a two-way dialogue, and we do value your comments. So we can appreciate, the frustrations felt with the process thus far, and we do hope to work with you and hopefully shift the tone. So thanks again for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.